Hi, I'm Emma. I'm a senior this year, and I'm doing my practicum at Goodwill, where their English classroom is focused on adult immigrants specifically, and I'm in the level 1 and level 2 classrooms. Um, so I haven't actually previously known very much about the specifics of the six principles, but they're all concepts that we've talked about enough in class that I feel like I'm familiar with them when I'm hearing about them and reading about them. For the first one, know your learners. That one's super important because, like, in our classroom, with the adult immigrants, they all come from such different backgrounds in various countries and very different skill levels. And so, like, those things all have a very big influence. But I think one of the biggest things is when you consider where they are in their lives and what they're going for. Like, they are here for jobs. They want to be able to integrate into society. And so that influences the lessons that we teach. We teach more like concrete concepts, like going to the doctor or talking on a 911 call, like things that you need to have those skills to function well in an English speaking society. Um, Create conditions for language learning is really important. One of my classes, I have two different mentoring teachers in my two classes, and one of them, he is does a spectacular job at creating this classroom environment that's so calm and conversational that students are readily willing to engage all the time, and you can see them actively improving and feeling motivated to keep going because it just means that they'll be able to have these conversations more fully. So I feel like that's a really powerful way to do that. Have it less about like you need to pass this test and more about like, well, can we talk about this now? Because that's a huge goal for them. For designing high quality lessons for language development, that one's really interesting, and that one's the one I definitely need to work most on, I think. Because there's so many parts of it that are super important, like gestures and visuals, and relying on high frequency vocab and audio support, and all these different parts that you can use to make your lesson more scaffolded and more comprehensible. I did a practice lesson yesterday, and it kind of got derailed because I was doing too much explaining and not enough modeling. And so it's just like finding those different ways to target language and make it comprehensible for low level students while still getting complex directions across. Like, that's definitely something I need to work on and want to learn more about. Number 4, adapting lesson delivery as needed is super important. And I feel like you see it constantly if you're watching your mentor teacher, or at least I do, where they'll say something and they like look at the students, and if they feel like they don't 100% get it, they're gonna rephrase it. They're gonna say it again. They're gonna ask questions and try and engage students to make sure that they actually understand, which is super important. For number 5, monitor and assess student language development. That is, of course, a very important part of what we do, but it's like, for me, I like to do that more implicitly rather than with tests. Everyone has a different method, but for me, I think that you can assess someone's development just by having a conversation with them. And if you do that every day, then you see how they're developing. And you notice what language is harder for them to understand and what they're starting to get easier and easier. So I think tests tend to be less helpful in this environment with adult immigrants because, I mean, they all come from very different language backgrounds, and I think several of them become discouraged when the focus is on writing and when the focus is on like getting it 100% right rather than like doing their best. Principle 6, engage and collaborate within a community of practice. I thought that one was really interesting and is definitely one of those things that will develop once we're real teachers with our own jobs. But even now in our practicum, it's important to talk to your mentor teacher and kind of like engage with them on the material and on the lessons and feel like you're developing yourself as a teacher. When I taught my lesson this week, my mentoring teacher went over each part with me, and like we discussed different ways that we could adapt the activities, and it really helped me. And he like afterwards, after I taught, he gave me constructive criticism on the things that I needed to work on and positive feedback because I was a little bit down on myself. And like that really helped me shift my perspective about what was most important in that lesson.